Quran, Surah 81, at Takwir, the Overthrowing. When the sun is overthrown, and when the stars fall, and when the hills are moved, and when the camels big with young are abandoned, and when the wild beasts are herded together, and when the seas rise, and when the souls are reunited, and when the girl child that was buried alive is asked for what sin she was slain, and when the pages are laid open, and when the sky is torn away, and when hell is lighted, and when the garden is brought nigh, then every soul will know what it has made ready. Oh, but I call to witness the planets, the stars which rise and set, and the close of night, and the breath of morning, that this is in truth the word of an honored messenger, mighty, established in the presence of the Lord of the throne, one to be obeyed and trustworthy. And your comrade is not mad. Surely he beheld him on the clear horizon, and he is not avid of the unseen, nor is this the utterance of a devil worthy to be stoned. Whither then go you? This is naught else than a reminder unto creation, unto whomsoever of you willeth to walk straight, and you will not, unless it be that Allah wills, the Lord of creation. And now the Arabic, as recited by Saad El-Ghamdi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انكدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت وإذا العشار عطلت وإذا الوحوش حشرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس زوجت وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت وإذا الصحف نشرت وإذا السماء كشطت وإذا الجحيم سعرت وإذا الجنة أزلفت علمت نفس ما أحضرت فلا أقسم بالخنس الجوار الكنس والليل إذا عسعس والصبح إذا تنفس إنه لقول رسول كريم ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين وما صاحبكم بمجنون ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب بضنين وما هو بقول شيطان رجيم فأين تذهبون إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله رب العالمين.
When it comes to religion, when it comes to someone trying to start a new religion or significantly alter an existing religion, the question of authority inevitably comes up, of authenticity. How do we know you speak for God? What proof do you have of the divine origin of this material? The person needs to convince people this is not just the work of a man, that this is the work of God. This is a very early surah, so it was when Muhammad was encountering some rather predictable and obvious questions. Wasn't this Muhammad saying all these things? You know, that guy we have known for 40 years. Why is he suddenly producing these works, this poetry that seems to be captivating so many people? Is it just plain old Muhammad? Or is it an evil spirit, a jinn? Has he become some kind of magician? Now, Muhammad would be hearing these things, and this surah is a direct response to those types of questions. In the gospel, Jesus faced many similar questions. Wasn't this the son of Mary and Joseph? How can this ordinary person, this likely uneducated person, how can he know enough to argue with the scribes and the priests? By what authority does he claim to be the Son of God? Who or what is behind these signs and wonders? They accuse Jesus of doing these miraculous things in the name of Satan. And, in one of the more famous passages in Matthew, they actually accuse Jesus of driving out demons in the name of Satan. And of course, Jesus points out this contradiction, this fallacy that Satan would drive out Satan. And it's actually where we get the famous term, at least in English, it's famous, a house divided against itself will not stand. It's a particularly famous phrase in America because of its association with Abraham Lincoln and the American Civil War. So it's hard work convincing people that your work is truly coming from God. So fast forward to Muhammad's time. Now, the Quran isn't exactly the same type of miracle that Jesus had performed, things like healing people, feeding 5,000, rising from the dead, and all that. There were many others. What Muhammad's doing, reciting words, it's a very, very different brand of miracle. But it is the only miracle that Muhammad ever claimed. And his entire religion relies upon it. So, as you see in the later parts of this sermon, Muhammad, without a more obvious miracle, he can only state as eloquently as possible that he is actually telling the truth. He is not a liar or a crazy person or a magician or some kind of evil opportunist. And this was probably a tough sell. I mean, if it was an easy sell, he would have never had to go to Medina. Now, one reason is because the text of this surah doesn't really have any support for these assertions or defenses within the text itself. It's kind of like saying, hey, I'm telling the truth. You want proof I'm telling you the truth? Well, I just told you I'm telling the truth. And that I'm honest and that this is all true. Oh, okay, case closed. And that's how it would be seen by many, which is why you got to kind of spice it up a little bit. If you read the second half of the surah by itself, again, it sounds like what I just told you, some kind of self-reinforcing thing that's not terribly convincing. But there's more. There is a reason for the first part of this surah, for the grandiose and the epic language in the first part. Muhammad has to convince people that this language is so stunning, so bold, so important, that it came from God rather than from Muhammad. And then, once you establish the miracle, you have to convince people that this is actually something divine and not some kind of magic trick or evil spell or just some really fantastic poetry in a land that had plenty of fantastic poetry. And that's where the last part of Muhammad's sort of secret sauce comes in. The thing that allowed Muhammad to get off the ground here. It's Muhammad's previous reputation as a well-tempered, honest person that gives these words a bit more weight than they otherwise would have had. So you put all that together, and now you might have a religious movement that's going somewhere. But it's still a heavy lift, and it's a tough sell. And you really, really have to go big because this isn't just a poem. People aren't just supposed to look at this and say, oh, wow, what pretty words. I like that. Like someone who hears a good song and just moves on with their day. That's not the kind of thing Muhammad is going for here. Like Jesus, Muhammad is going right at the heart of a society and telling it things it does not want to hear. This is not just beautiful language. These are also some massively new ideas, or at least big ideas, and ones that cannot be ignored. This is a moral throwdown in the style of John the Baptist. Repent of your evil ways. God is paying attention, and you will be held accountable for everything. You can go to paradise or you can go to hell. It's your choice. And it's not just a God saying this. This is the God, Allah. This is the creator of the universe who can take down the stars, wipe out the sun, and boil the oceans. You will be held accountable for your actions. Now, let's just read the first part of this surah again, because that is such an important part. The first part, the attention grabber, and then the sermon. So you have the attention grabber. We old journalists used to call that a lead, give the people a reason to read the rest of it. And boy, does it grab your attention. Previewing the day when it all ends and something new begins and what will happen on that day. When the sun is put out, and when the stars fall down, and when the mountains are blown away, and when pregnant camels are left unattended, and when wild beasts are gathered together, and when the seas are set on fire, and when the souls in their bodies are paired once more, and when baby girls buried alive are asked for what crime they were put to death. That's some big time language. And it starts, as it does so often, with nature themes. And the nature themes here should be familiar by now. And the idea is to jar a person out of thinking, a person, you see them, you want to convey this big message. So you have to kind of rip them out of what's currently around them, take their mind out of what's currently possible. These things are all supposed to convey some kind of terror, is an idea that things just suddenly are not how they should be, like the sun and the stars going dark. That would scare anyone at any time. But there are a few of these I do want to go over because they probably don't make any sense to a modern reader. These are things that are calamitous, but just aren't quite as obvious to people in our time, such as the part about pregnant camels going unattended. Who cares? Why is that scary? Well, because camels were some of the most valuable commodities in that area at that time. And a pregnant camel isn't just giving all the benefits of a camel, like transport and carrying large objects, and if it's a female, giving milk. Well, I guess if it's pregnant, it would be a female, obviously. In addition to that, it's about to give you even more camels. And that's something someone should be paying attention to. When you see an unattended pregnant camel, it means something really big is happening. What was once valuable is no longer valuable. In our time, just imagine a bunch of luxury cars in a parking lot left alone with the keys inside. It would give you an eerie, uneasy, end of the world feeling. And then there is the part of the infant girls being buried alive. Now, what is that? What's that referring to? Well, in ancient pre Islamic Arabia, it was somewhat common. It was a rare but accepted practice, or maybe even something rather common. The history is a bit fuzzy on how prevalent this was. But the killing of newborn girls happened, and few people had any moral qualms about this. Now, some did. Muhammad wasn't actually the first to speak out about it, but it was definitely a minority position to go around saying this is wrong. It wasn't seen as a huge deal by very many people. A very good historical analogy would actually be in our time, in my country, with, say, the United States' attitude toward abortion. The majority opinion is that people want it available. And they seem to understand this is a somewhat morally iffy practice, and it's kind of a cavalier attitude toward human life, but they don't really want to think about it or talk about it. And most don't want people to know that they took part took part in this thing. If you had an abortion, unless you are the leftist of the left, you're not going to celebrate and shout that out. Now, in Arabia, female infanticide was in a rather similar state. Now, the reasons varied for wanting to do this to your daughter, from a possible financial burden to possible dishonor down the road if she abandoned the family, to any more frankly stupid reasons related to female sexuality. I won't even go into them. This was an option for Arab parents before Islam. They would have a female child. They would decide it was inconvenient to have this female child and then go out and bury the body in the desert. Thus the words in the Quran here. And when the girl child that was buried alive is asked, for what sin she was slain. And the idea that this was done in secrecy, or at least it tended to be done in secrecy, it has relevance as well. That is why this line is directly followed by the idea that all things will be revealed when all the pages are laid open. Perhaps no one saw you in the pitch black of the desert night, but God saw you. And with Muhammad preaching his message, you can no longer claim ignorance on this one. This is wrong. You know it, and you will be held accountable for this murder. And it is the most awful of crimes, because it's not just any murder. It's the murder of an innocent child. And worse than that, a completely helpless child. And worse than that, your child, the person you have been given the duty of protecting. And you, as its appointed protector, you became its killer. It's the worst possible way a person can abuse power. And it points to a general spiritual illness in a society that can tolerate and normalize something like this. And again, back to our time, some of this might sound familiar. If you've ever wondered why the Catholic Church gets so worked up about abortion, in addition to like biblical teaching and church teaching, that really dates back to the first century. It's not just scripture, it's tradition. That's the big reason, the moral reason I just gave you. Like in Christian morality, it represents the complete collapse of our basic duties to each other. And at the closest, most familial level, the severing of a bond that's supposed to be loving and sacred and pure, a level of spiritual upending that should just be unfathomable. This is a betrayal on the level of Judas. It's actually worse. At least Jesus could defend himself if he wanted to. It's this closeness and the natural duty and absence of love where it should be at its strongest. That, combined with the murder, that's what raises it to such a high level of spiritual illness and makes it one of the worst sins imaginable. That is the reason participating in an abortion, even with encouragement or money or any support, means automatic excommunication from the Catholic Church, and has been that way for quite a long time. It's a very big deal. Now, Muhammad was making basically the same point in his time, and thus the reason the Quran says this. Now, Muhammad didn't actually invent this, this idea that, oh, hey, this is wrong. He was piggybacking on an earlier campaign by a guy named Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail. So this wasn't necessarily Muhammad's idea, or something new that the Quran was introducing here. The idea that this was horrible, it had a bit of momentum before Muhammad. But it would be Islam that would stop this practice dead in its tracks, because Muhammad had a very similar attitude, say, to the Catholic Church's modern opinion of abortion, Muhammad's attitude toward female infanticide, again, was basically the same. And so after Muhammad, in his community first, and then obviously once he conquered the peninsula, this was done. From now on, a murder was a murder. As Dr. Seuss's classic character Horton used to say, a person is a person no matter how small. From this point onward, that would actually be an Islamic principle. All right, one more thing on this. Now, we haven't done any Arabic, so I wanted to explain the title here. Takwir, the overthrowing, or the turning into a sphere. That may sound kind of weird, but the term that's used in the first line, which literally says, when the sun is wrapped up, that's what the al-takwir is referring to here. Now, this is a special kind of wrapped up. It denotes a kind of neatness, and specifically a rounded type of neatness. Thus, it's used with the sun, a round object. The root here is the simple KWR, kaf wa ra, which means to roll up, to make something into a ball, like a turban, or if Arabs lived a bit further north, rolling a snowball, to make something into a nice, clean sphere. I don't know which Arabic word is used for black hole, but this one might just work. And that same idea, this paradox of something that is both destroying and creating, it's a common theme in these types of Quranic surahs. When you wrap something into a ball, be it a piece of clay or the entire universe, you are condensing and bringing new order to something. And like with some other Quranic descriptions of the Day of Judgment, this is somewhat consistent with modern ideas of how the universe may end. Everything may just collapse back to a single point, a singular sphere. The sun, the stars, the mountains, everything comes back to the single point from which it originated. Maybe you'd call that God. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time. Inshallah.